has been mesmerizing audiences for the last 5 decades with the sweet sound of his saxophone. But who really is Calvin Stemley? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're about to find out on the special episode of The Timmy Willis Show. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to another exciting episode of The Timmy Willis Show. Timmy Willis, guess what? That's me. And you're in for an exciting treat. Today's special guest is Mr. Calvin Stemley. Calvin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Timmy. How about yourself?
I'm good, man.
All right, all right.
I'll tell you what, you're the first guest I've had on my show that outdressed me, man. but I still love you, Calvin.
Oh, well, wasn't intentional.
But you did it. You look great, man.
Well, thank you so much, Timmy.
Now let's take this interview and take us on this journey. And we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Where were you born?
Well, I was born on a Saturday in Chicago, Illinois, at the Cook County Hospital, December the 19th, 1953.
Oh, great. Now let me ask you this. Were you raised there in Chicago?
Why, certainly.
Okay. Well, what did you do for fun as a little boy? Just go back as far as you can go. What did you do for fun?
Well, what I did as a youngster was we grew up in a neighborhood that was sort of volatile with gangs and that type of thing. So the idea was to find things positive for us to do. So the first thing that we did, my brother and I, was we found some old pails and we turned them upside down. We used to beat on them like they were bongos. So it all started with that type of a thing. At that time also there was a couple of positive organizations in our neighborhood. One was called a 4-H club. So we joined the 4-H club at around 9, 10 years old. And that was a very good situation for us because it provided us an opportunity to get involved in things such as making model planes and learn how to do candle making, scented candles. And they had a Share the Fun Festival where we actually put a band together and we went and we performed for that and lost miserably. But we had fun making music.
Okay. Now let me stop you right there. Now already you're up to 9 years old, but let's back up a little bit. Now, when you were say kindergarten, first, second grade, did you watch cartoons?
I certainly did.
Did you have a favorite?
What was my favorite cartoon? Well, probably I know Roadrunner. Okay. And I know we used to watch Bugs Bunny, was another one we used to watch. So those were kind of the favorite cartoons we watched as a Chicago. Okay. And there was another program that came on, I don't know if it was nationwide, but we used to watch things like Garfield Goose, which had Clutch Cargo on it, and there was another program on there that was called the Treetop House. And it was kind of similar to the setup that you would see with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that type of a thing. So these were some of the cartoons that we watched. Now what about, did you have a favorite?
Oh, you know what? Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, man. I mean, Saturday mornings when I was a little boy, man, that's when the cartoons used to come on here on the north side of Pittsburgh. Now it's just the news on Saturday mornings now. But Saturday mornings when I was growing up, that was cartoon time for all us kids. But what about the Three Stooges? Did you guys,
I saw them. They weren't a cartoon, but before we go forward with the Three Stooges, also let's not forget the infamous Mr. Magoo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Done it again, Magoo.
Oh, yeah, so you like Mr. Magoo,
I
too,
like Mr. Magoo.
Yeah.
But yes, I did watch the Three Stooges. And
did you have a favorite Stooge?
Well, I liked Curly. He was my favorite of the three.
Yeah.
Because there was, there were different ones. The regular was Mo and Larry, but there was a Shep and there was Curly. And I always liked Curly because he had whoop, 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 and all those things, silly things he was doing back then.
That sounds like you had a lot of fun growing up in your neighborhood, huh?
Well, as I said before, it was a lot of fun growing up in my neighborhood in Chicago. And the reason is that our parents and whatnot were screening different activities. We did have a curfew and that type of thing, but it was a very dangerous and volatile situation in our neighborhoods with gangs. The formation of two rival gangs that now, derivative of what's known now as the Crips and the Bloods, that all started in Chicago.
Okay.
And when I was growing up, we used to see some of these gangs in battle and that type of thing. And the main thing that we tried to do as children was just to try to stay out the way of getting involved with those. So, as I said before, between the 4-H club and our parents, and sometimes we'd go visit and overnight stays with different people in the neighborhood, friends of mine and whatnot, we'd have a good time popping popcorn and staying up all night watching movies and stuff like that,
Sounds like fun. Hey, Doug, let's get that. Yeah, they go to wide shot. Now, the saxophone. What was it about the saxophone that caught your interest that made you want to play it and master that instrument?
Well, actually, that was a long journey because it wasn't the saxophone that actually got everything started. It was the clarinet.
Oh, that was the first one.
The clarinet was first.
Well, what caught your interest for the clarinet? What made you want to play the clarinet?
Well, actually,
and when was that?
Okay, well, let's go back to 6th grade, which is when I got involved in music. And just a little prelude to that was before 6th grade band at Yale Upper Grade Center in Chicago, I really was not that interested in school. So my history between kindergarten and 6th grade was not that very good. I was not studious. I did not make good grades. I was a behavioral issue for teachers and principals and whatnot like that. And I just didn't have too much interest. If I could find some old report cards, very embarrassing, behavioral things, and didn't pass this and that type of thing, a bunch of flags on the report card. And then 6th grade band happened. And the way that all happened was a question to my father, and the question was, Dad, how is it, who's a trumpet player? My father's a trumpet player. And one day he was in the room practicing after work, and I knocked on the door and I asked him, I said, Dad, how are you pushing those little 3 buttons and getting all those sounds out? All I really wanted was an answer to what was the process for that. But instead of him answering that, he said, sit down, son. And he reached up into the drawer and he pulled out a mouthpiece, a trumpet mouthpiece, and he put it up and he says, do this. And I did it. And then he took and he put the mouthpiece onto the trumpet, and then we started to get sound. So I was all excited and geared up to go to Yale Upper Grade Center and start on the trumpet. But by the time that I had gotten to the band class and I asked the band director about the trumpet, he says, oh, son, he says, we don't have any more. The trumpet's been taken up. So the trumpet is a very shiny instrument, very regal in quality. So I looked around and saw what else I had. I said, well, what about the saxophone? I saw an alto saxophone, looked like it was brand new. He said, well, son, he says, I'm sorry. He says, but that's somebody else is playing the saxophone. So we went through this little musical game, and the trombone, and then I asked about the tenor sax. And all of these instruments were taken. So he said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you, son. I'll start you on the clarinet, and then once we get into some of the other instruments, I'll switch you. Well, guess what, Tim? That was 50 years ago. He still didn't switch me. So I stayed on the clarinet for 6th grade through high school. And when I was in my last year of high school, they had a stage band, what they call a stage band, and I was asked to play the baritone sax. And I did, and I didn't really too much care for it, but that was my start of being introduced to the saxophone. And my interest at the time was to become a classical clarinetist with the symphony. So I really wasn't paying too much attention to the saxophone.
Okay.
But what drew me to it was once I got into college and I started to play with the different bands on campus at Grambling, and I played alto saxophone.
Well, let me ask you this. How long did you stay with the clarinet, and what was your practice regimen like?
Well, actually, I started with the clarinet in the very beginning, and I was an issue with my parents because in the beginning, I liked music. As I said before, I was not studious. I had some issues before band, but once I got involved in music, I really took it seriously. So the problem was that I would want to practice the clarinet way late into the night hours. And my parents would tell me, put it up, put the thing away. And the next night they have the same issue. So I practiced so diligently with it that within a 2-week period, I was moved from beginner's band to intermediate. So I started to have an affinity for this music thing. And then a lot of my instruments got stolen. I'd put them in a locker, it'd get stolen. My father would take me to a pawn shop, we'd get another one. I'd take that one, I'd put it somewhere, it'd get stolen, whatnot. So I have to thank my dad for having the wherewithal to continually get those instruments that were getting stolen and replaced, or else I probably would have not continued. Yeah. So he did that, and as I said, I started to practice. I loved the sound of the clarinet. I still have it, and on occasion I still play it.
You still have it?
Yeah, I still have it, and I still play it.
That's great. Now let me ask you this. Now, when you were practicing on the clarinet, were you reading music, or you were just playing off the top of your head?
No, we were in a very formalized situation. We had a great band director. His name is Burgess Gardner. And Mr. Gardner now, I guess, would be about 82, 83 years old. He's still in Chicago. And he was a very renowned musician in the local market, but he also had played with some greats like Ray Charles and Horace Silver and whatnot like that. But he gave us the proper foundation. Let's talk about something. Foundation, very important in life. And he gave us the proper musical foundation of the things we needed to do to be successful as musicians. A lot of his students, including myself, became professional musicians or professional educators under his tutelage. So it was a situation we practiced method books, and we had, for some of us, had private study, and so that was the type of thing. And after we got into 7th, 8th grade, he had an opportunity to go to the high school. So when he left to go to the high school, he went to Dunbar Vocational High School. We were slated to go to the neighborhood high school, which was Parker, but we all made a mass exodus and followed him to Dunbar Vocational. And at Dunbar Vocational, what was unique about my high school experience was we actually got a chance to major in music in high school. So I should have brought with me tonight my high school diploma, which says that we completed a series of courses in instrumental music. That's on the actual diploma. So some people at the high school, it was a vocational high school, they actually took up painting, paint shop, or engineering, or architecture drafting, and on their diploma it has that. So in essence, those students in those fields were able to actually leave high school and go right into the workforce. And for those students like me, it gave us very good preparation for our first 2 years in college in the music, because that was a lot of review for me and all of my cohorts that were in the program at Dunbar Vocational High School in Chicago.
That's excellent, man. Now, before we go to the break, for the young ones who's watching right now, what would you say to them as far as the importance of learning to read music? Is it important or is it not important?
Well, it depends on what you intend to do. If you intend to pursue music, to be an orchestral player, play in a symphony orchestra, concert band, something like that, you do need the skills of being able to read. Also, once upon a time, there was an industry called a studio musician industry, which was flourishing very well on the West Coast and in New York. Not necessarily as much as it used to, but in order to have those type of jobs and whatnot and to work, and they were very lucrative, they paid very well, you needed to have the ability to read music. So there was a significance to that. But I don't give all of, say that that's all you need to be able to do. If you're creative person and you want to learn how to actually play and be creative, well, you need to learn other skills and abilities such as improvisation, how to play jazz and those other types of things. So in answer to your question, yes, as the fundamentals of learning how to do it, you learn how to read music, and that's not a bad skill to have, even if you decide to be an improviser. It means that if somebody needs somebody, that they need somebody to be able to read a chart and whatnot, you don't get eliminated because of your inability to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. So to me, you know, the ability to be able to do both is good. But I taught at a school that had a wonderful musician by the name of Earl Garner, and you probably have heard of him. Wrote the famous song, Misty and whatnot. Well, he did not read music at all, mm-hmm. but he was a phenomenal musician. Right. So it's, you know, it's kind of difficult to say. Fortunately for me, I have the ability to do both.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to go to a break, but when we come back, would you share with us the first time you had the opportunity to perform in front of an audience and what that experience was like for you?
Most definitely. Okay,
ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with the multi-talented Mr. Calvin Stemley. With the multi-talented Mr. Calvin Stemley. And before we went to the break, I had asked Calvin if he could share with us his experience of the first time he performed in front of an audience. So could you share that experience with us?
Well, the first time that I got a chance to perform before an audience, and this is not unique to me, was at the church. And my brother and I had just taken up band in sixth grade, and we were just now getting our experiences. So the first thing that you learn after you learn a few notes is you learn how to play different Christmas carols and things like that. So our first experience in front of an audience was at the church. And we played God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, and we played Silent Night and those type of things. There were 3 of us, clarinet and 2 trumpet players. So it was a great experience for us because we know that church audiences are not judgmental, and they really encourage and whatnot. Yeah. So that was a very good experience.
Well, how old were you then?
Wow. I had to be around 9 or 10 years old.
About 9 or 10 years old?
Yeah, 9 or 10 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you nervous?
Of course.
Were you?
Of course you are.
Okay.
Of course you are. As a matter of fact, moving that to now, even now, you know, there's a certain tinge of nervousness before you perform, and that's a good thing. It kind of really keeps you on your toes. But from that experience, in middle school, a lot happened. And around the 7th grade, after we'd had about a year in, our band director had a band called Burgess Garden and the Soul Crusaders, which performed at the Regal Theater in Chicago on 47th and what is called now King Drive. And Burgess was able to get us to, we were called the Soulful Exotics, was the name of our band. We had 14 horns.
Wow.
And I had double duty of playing clarinet, and I also was a dancer. At that particular time, I was very much into James Brown and splits and moves and all of those type of things. So part of the act was I would do a James Brown act in addition to playing the clarinet. So we went on, we played at that Regal Theater, and at that particular performance that we had, it was kind of an amateur show, but we had some headliners on there also. So on the show with us was little Stevie Wonder, was Aretha Franklin. There was Jerry Butler, the Iceman from Chicago. There was another singer named Walter Jackson. He was on the show. We had Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions was on that show. So we had all of these iconic figures on there, and we came in second place in the talent show. So that was a very good experience for me. And as I mentioned, may have mentioned to you, I went to a vocational high school, which we actually majored in a shop. Our shop was music. So the other thing that happened for me was I got involved in writing music. And the way that that happened was, at the time I had a girlfriend, and really liked her quite a bit, and so I thought about writing a song about her. So we would, after we had our little skills and whatnot, we'd go to the piano and I'd figure out a little bass line and chords and whatnot and put a melody to it. So that started an interest in me to not only play, but then I began to be interested in writing. So as we started to learn orchestration, we started to learn how to arrange music, I started to write different songs and arrangements for the band. And the first song that I wrote was in an auditorium. And we played the arrangement of it, and Tim, it was horrible. It was the worst thing that could have ever happened. I had done, orchestrations were wrong, I had transposed wrong, it was just terrible. So I had a decision to make, to accept it as failure, or to go back to the drawing board and do another arrangement. The next arrangement I did was called You Are Everything, and Everything Is You by the Stylistics. So I wrote an arrangement for that for our jazz band, and we were in an auditorium program, and they also had it on the PA system for the students that didn't attend, and it went marvelously. And that launched my interest in composition, arranging, and that went on through high school. I wrote for the jazz ensemble, and I wrote a concert march for the band. I was able to go to Vandercook College of Music as a junior in high school and study with composer Forrest Bucktail.
Wow.
And he gave us the skills and ability. In the final project, we had to write a march, a concert march. So I do have that somewhere in the closet, and I'm going to pull that out one day and record that march.
That sounds good. Now you've gotten all that experience in high school. Of course, the day had to come. It's time to leave high school. So when we come back, will you continue to take us on this journey? What did you do after you leave high school?
Well, after I left high school.
When we come back.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Stick and stay. Don't go away. Take a slug from a jug, and we'll be right back with Mr. Calvin Stemley. For those of you just joining us, you are missing it. Have a seat, take your shoes off, and get comfortable. We're here with Mr. Calvin Stemley, who's actually outdressing me on this episode. But before we went to the break, Calvin, I was, as you take us on this journey, now you've got all this experience when you were in your high school years, but now it's time for you to leave high school. So what happens next?
Okay. What happens next is I go to college. But I did want to share one other thing with the high school with you. I also attended school with a guy that you may or may not have known that was on the A team. His name was Mr. T.
Oh,
and we went to school
I pity
together.
the fool.
We went to school together. He was an outstanding athlete. He ran track. He was a wrestler, and he was a star on the football team. So he went to Hollywood, and rest is history. But I did graduate in 1971 from Paul Lawrence Dunbar Vocational School in Chicago, and I was on my way to Mississippi Valley State. And I had a scholarship there. The band director had come and recruit me and the whole thing. But a few weeks before I was supposed to attend Mississippi Valley, which is in Ida Bena, Mississippi, there was an incident, a racial incident, and somebody was kind of killed or something down there, and I kind of had different thoughts about it. And I said, I'm coming from the north, I got a northern attitude, I'm going to the south, and I'm going to go to this Delta, and I may, things might not work out, because I was very outspoken. So at the last minute, I told my band director that I wasn't going to Mississippi Valley State. Of course, at that time, all the scholarships had been awarded, and so he says, well, let me see if I can get you in Grambling. So he called the band director, and the band director told him, he says, well, we don't have any scholarships, you know, and this type of thing. He says, well, he can write music. He says, we'll give him a scholarship. So that summer, I had a job as security without a weapon at my high school, night watchman. And I go around, I look and I turn the keys and do all that stuff. But in between the times of my runs, there was a piano, and I was writing arrangements for Grambling. So when I got to Grambling in 1971, I came with 2 or 3 arrangements that I gave to the band, and we were playing my arrangements from 1971 to 75 at some of those games that people were seeing on TV. I had written an arrangement on Barry White's I'm Gonna Love You. I had written an arrangement on Are You Man Enough? I had written an arrangement on Valdez in the Country by Donny Hathaway. I had written an arrangement on You Haven't Done Nothing by Stevie Wonder. And I'd written an arrangement of Ohio Players' Pain, and the trumpet solo I wrote for Grambling's trumpet solo, which we performed at the Battle of the Bands in 1972. So I get to Grambling, and I'm on a work-study program, but after Conrad Hutchison Jr., the famous legacy, found out that I could write music, he immediately gave me a scholarship. And it was a wonderful experience, if I could share that with you at Grambling.
Yeah, yeah.
In 1972, we recorded an album for Mercury Records. It was called Tiger Time. It was the Grambling Marching Band. And on that, we had Stop to Love You, Save Will Be Your Own. We had some of the things, A Ball of Confusion, all those type of tunes, as well as concert marches and whatnot. That was 1972. Also in 1972, we were asked to go to Liberia, Africa, and represent the United States of America at an inauguration of President then William Tolbert in Liberia.
Okay.
And on the plane with us was President Nixon's wife. She was there at the inauguration with us. And we performed all over Monrovia, Liberia, and different concerts and marching band, things like that. So that was a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah.
The following year, we went to the Hula Bowl in Honolulu, Hawaii, and we played for the Pro Bowl there that year. And so it was just a very, very, very wonderful experience. We played, when the Steelers played the Vikings for Super Bowl IX, we were there. Grambling's band was there. We played with the Duke Ellington Orchestra at the time, was being led by Duke's son Mercer. And we also performed all over the United States of America. Every stadium you can think of. We were at Los Angeles Coliseum. We played at the Astrodome. We played the Superdome wasn't built yet. We played Tulane Stadium. We played Texas Stadium. Every year we played at Dallas Redskins game, Grambling band. So it was
I
just.
seen you guys in Dallas when I used to live in Dallas. Now, but let me ask you this. If anyone has ever seen the Grambling Marching Band, you know that is nothing but precision. When you guys come out on the field, man, you come out on the field like a thunderstorm, man. I mean, you be like whipping it. But my question to you is, Kelvin, how much practice and rehearsal does it take to get it like that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because we go back to something I said originally, and I said fundamentals. Well, the same thing happens with greatness in bands or whatever you're going to be successful at. And so the reason why that band was the way it was, and just for your information, there were 20% of us that were music majors. The other 80% were non-majors. So how can you get that happening and have a great band musically and whatnot? Well, it all started with the fact that the freshmen came in 2 weeks before the upperclassmen, and our schedule started at 5 a.m. in the morning. And 5 a.m. in the morning, we were out there on the at Dunbar Hall on the lines, and we were doing all kind of calisthenics and leg raises and all type of exercise, that type of things. That went from 5 to 6. Then we had to run the square for a few laps. Then we came back and we had to actually do precision marching. We have to actually do steps, that type of thing. And we practiced on marching. Then we went to breakfast. After we came back from breakfast, from 9 to 11, we worked on music. Whatever the music was, the marches and whatnot like that. We go to lunch, we come back after lunch, and we back out there on the lines marching again. We go to dinner, we come back, we work on music, and then we go for evening practice. So we did that for 2 weeks, and then the upperclassmen came and they joined us.
Now let me ask you, was the evening practice a combination of the marching and the music at that time?
The evening
Because you were doing you were doing marching, and then you would come back and you would do music. And then you would do the marching. But is at some point that was your rehearsal a combination of the marching married with the music?
In some instances, it was both. In some instances, if you needed to work on the music more, that was the focus. If it was the marching needed more, that was the focus. Now, after we have that full day of that, let's say things didn't go too well with the marching. Your squad leader or section leader would have you back out at night, 12 o'clock, and you're out there on those lines practicing on the things that you couldn't do. Now, once you leave there at 12 o'clock to go back, you're up at 5 the next morning because you're hollering across to the I-20, Interstate 20, I want to be a tiger, I want to be a tiger. So it was a lot of hard work, and they had 180, we're marching 180 members. There were 60 members on the sideline waiting to get in, looking to see if you're making mistakes and that type of thing. So it was very, very, very competitive. But the discipline that we learned, the leadership abilities that we learned, the cooperative spirit that we learned, the competitiveness we learned, the proper attire, promptness. If you were a minute late on some of the trips, you got left. If you're supposed to be on the bus at 7, if it's 7:01, you got left. And that goes for if you happen to be in Los Angeles and the bus is leaving at 6 and you pop down at 6:05, we're heading towards the airport and you have to get back to Grambling the best way you can. So that type of discipline went with us and was probably actually the reason why we had so much success in life at whatever we did. If it was music or people who went into business, I look all over the country, the Grambling graduates are doing wonderful, great things. And it was because of being in that band under the tutors of Conrad Hutchinson Jr. and Mr. William Wiley that we got that. And we love them to this day. We talk about them on the phone. We go down for homecoming. They still are part of our life. They're the legacy that led us and made us who we are today.
Yeah, that's some serious discipline.
Most definitely.
Now, how many years did you spend at Grambling?
I was there for 4 years.
4 years?
So 1971 to graduated December 19th, which is my birthday, 1975 from Grambling.
So you still keep in touch with some of your...
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. Some of the people that were in the band with me actually were directors now that I went to school with, you know. Mr. Hutchinson is since deceased, and so the tradition is still carried on. At the time I was in the band, it was all male. And then right before I graduated, they started to integrate the band with females and whatnot. But still a great band, a great tradition. Very proud to go down there for homecomings and Bayou Classics and see what they're doing. Yeah,
well, I'm just tickled pink because I used to watch Grambling, man. I used to just sit there and say, wow, look at them dudes, man. And I'm sitting here right here with a Grambling alumni right here in front of me, man.
Oh, yeah, well, it was a wonderful experience. I shouldn't say that around my wife, but sometimes I say that was the best 4 years of my life, you know. And but you know, academically and whatnot, you know. I mean, I don't really mean that, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean, and musically, the experience. Now, so it came time when you graduated from Grambling.
Yes.
And so as we continue on this journey, what happens with Mr. Calvin Stemley next? When we come back from the break, would you share that with us?
I certainly will.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, stick and stay. Don't go away. Take a slug from a jug. We'll be right back with Mr. Calvin Stemley. All right, we're here with the multi-talented Mr. Calvin Stemley as he takes us on this journey. Before we went to the break, he had shared with us his Grambling State College years, and now it comes time for him to graduate. And I asked Calvin, what happens next? And he's going to share that with us right now. So what happens next in your life? You graduated from Grambling, now what do you do?
Well, what happens is December the 19th, which is my birthday, 1975, I graduated from Grambling. And my family came down for the event, an extended family came down for the event, and we all drove back to Chicago. So when I get back to Chicago, I'm looking for a job, a band director. I'm fresh out of Grambling, I'm looking for a high school or elementary school to go work at, and guess what? There were no jobs available. So after looking for several months and doing some substitute teaching in the area, I made a decision that I was gonna go to graduate school. So I applied to North Texas State, was accepted, had a fellowship to go there, and if you know anything about their program, they had one of the best jazz programs in the country. But unbeknownst to me, one of my instructors from Grambling, his name was, just passed away recently, his name was Dr. Ernest T. Lampkins, was at University of Pittsburgh working on his PhD. Okay. And unbeknownst to me, he put in an application to Pitt for me. So we get to about 2 or 3 weeks before I'm supposed to leave for Texas, and I get a letter from Pitt that says I was accepted into the ethnomusicology program with emphasis in Afro-American music to study with Nathan Davis. So I had a choice, North Texas, Pitt, North Texas. And the thing that made the difference was I had a fellowship to go to North Texas, but I had a fellowship and a teaching stipend to go there. So it's all about money.
Okay,
and
now for some of us who don't know, what is a teaching stipend?
Okay, a teaching stipend is that when you go to graduate school or you go to school, they pay you like a sort of a salary. You know, it's not a big salary, but it's enough to cover your living expenses and food and that type of thing. So I made a decision to come to the University of Pittsburgh. But I was coming, as I told you earlier, my interest was in theory and composition. So I was coming actually to be a theory and composition major at the University of Pittsburgh in ethnomusicology. When I got here, though, when I saw what the program was, it was more focused on electronic music and whatnot, and that disinterested me because I was interested in film scoring. I wanted to do what Quincy Jones did. So based on that, I started to play the saxophone, started taking lessons. And I was a TA, teaching assistant. So on the way to teach a class, we were doing the bebop period, and I picked up some records to play for the class. One of the records I picked up was called One Flight Up by Dexter Gordon on Blue Note Records. So the night before, I played the record, and there was a song on there called Tanya, which was written by the late, great Donald Byrd. It was 11 minutes long, and I got a chance to really hear Dexter Gordon play. At that moment, I fell in love with the tenor saxophone. And after that...
So, well, let me stop you right there. So up until that point, you were still on the clarinet?
I was playing clarinet and a little bit of alto saxophone.
So that's what you played all through your Grambling?
I played clarinet all through Grambling.
Okay. Yep. I just want to make sure we're
Matter of fact, well, go one further. I played not just clarinet, I played E-flat clarinet. They only had one of them. So if you were playing clarinet, and there's 50 of them, and there's an E-flat clarinet, the chances are if you do something or you mess up or something, you still get a chance to go because you're the only one. I was like a piccolo. Okay. Only one piccolo, several thousand flutes, but only one piccolo, same. So the E-flat clarinet put me in a very good position that I would make every performance that the band made. I was there from 71 through 70. I didn't miss any of them. So that was the situation. But when I came to Pitt, I was playing alto. And
so how did that, I mean, tell us, how did that come about? How did you, I mean, you're playing clarinet, and something happened that all of a sudden, now you have a saxophone in your hand.
Well, the thing is, as I told you earlier, I did play with some bands in college, too. And when the bands I played with, I was playing alto sax, too.
Okay, well, so, I mean, the first time you picked up a saxophone...
Well, that goes back to when I was in a stage band at Dunbar Vocational. I played baritone, which is the large saxophone. Not very long, not very long. And then after that, when I got into college, I played clarinet for the most part. But they did have a jazz band. Yeah. And in the jazz band, I played alto.
Okay. But when you came into the tenor...
Well, after I just told you about the Dexter Gordon situation,
Right.
that made me not want to play alto. Now, there was a little discrepancy that I had with Nathan Davis about that at the time. There was 3 alto players, and he needed a tenor player. So he was talking to me, young lady by the name of Dr. Jacqueline Young, who has a program out at Homewood Jazz Workshop, and a guy by the name of Dale Fielder. So Nathan was saying, well, one of y'all got to play tenor. I said, well, it ain't me. He said, well, Dale was a monster, and so he can play what he wanted. And Jackie, she was a good player too, and she's a very nice looking young lady, so I guess she kind of had advantage too. So after I heard Dexter Gordon, he didn't have to convince me. I really liked the tenor, and since that time, I don't own an alto. I sold the alto, and I just have an affinity for this instrument, the tenor saxophone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad, because you sure play that thing,
Well,
man.
thank you so much.
Sounds so good, you know. So take us, continue to take us.
So what happened was I made a decision to come to Pitt, and the plan was to come to Pitt for 2 years. I got here in September of 1976, graduate, and fly to Los Angeles and get involved in the film scoring, writing for movies,
Right.
that type of thing. So what happened was, while I was in graduate school, to get extra money, I started substitute teaching. So as I was substitute teaching, it was, providing a nice little salary. So when I did graduate, I said, well, I'll just stay a year or so and just get a little money before I go out west. And what happens is you start to make money, and then it gets better, and it gets better, it gets better, it gets better. You start to move up the scale, and then I got offered a position, a permanent position to be the band director at Allegheny when it was a high school. And so I took that job, and one of my students was Brian Edwards.
Drummer.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic drummer.
Went on to play with Prince and everything. He was there at the time that I was at Allegheny. So I did that, and I had a part-time schedule, and the other part of my day was spent at Oliver. So I had half a day as choral instrumental teacher, and then Oliver, I went over there, and I was supposed to be the choral teacher, and that worked out pretty good until the principal says, well, Mr. Stemley, we do the Messiah and all that, and at the time I didn't have those type of skills to pull that off, so I dropped that part of the half of day, and then Shenley High School was having what they call a teacher center, so I went to Shenley part-time and Allegheny part-time. So the band director that was at Shenley was Ken Cook, and he had a great program there with a lot of the jazz. Tony Campbell was his student, and Dwayne Dolphin. He had a great program there, but he left, and it left a position. So I took that position, and I was there for 3 years. And then after that, I transitioned to Westinghouse High School, and I was there for 17. So that was that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah, the Bulldogs, huh?
The Bulldogs. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But
now let me ask you this: as far as the film, doing the film scores, and did you still pursue that, or did that kind of like went onto the back burner?
That kind of went to the back burner, and every now and then there will be little opportunities that avail themselves. So that's something that may come back into play, because as I've kind of redone my basement now, I'm getting ready to convert it over to like a music studio and have keyboards and whatnot. And I probably will get back into arranging music also, because there's something to that too. When you bring to life something that's in your mind, and you're able to put it down on paper, and you actually conduct it, and it comes to life, and the sounds come back at you and whatnot. And I've always marveled at those people that could do that, like Quincy Jones, one of my people that is a mentor. People like, as I said, the 70s music with with Gamble and Huff and
Yeah,
Tom
Isaac
Bell and
Hayes.
Leonard Creed. All of those. That's just a wonderful thing, man. That's just that's another dimension of the music business and the music world, and I'm just very blessed and fortunate to be able to do some of that too. And like I said, to get back into it, because when I was teaching, I was doing a lot more of it. I was writing my own arrangements based on our instrumentation. If I didn't have full instrumentations, I had to rearrange things and, you know, pick the right types of things that fit the band that I had. And we had a lot of success with that. I was writing a lot of medleys and things like that. So
Right.
I'd like to get back at that.
Yeah, sounds good. Now look, the time came when your high school teaching career came to a halt, correct?
Yeah.
So when we come back, would you continue to take us on that journey? So what did Calvin Stemley do next?
Okay.
And with Stick and Stay Don't Go Away, don't you dare touch that dial. We'll be right back with Mr. Calvin Stemley.
Stemley, Jr. Calvin Stemley was a tenor saxophonist born in Chicago, Illinois. He graduated from the Grambling State University in Louisiana with a bachelor's degree in music education in 1975 and was a proud member of the world-famed Tiger Marching Band, known today as the best band in the land. He later earned a master's degree in ethnomusicology from the University of Pittsburgh in 1980. Mr. Stemley served Pittsburgh Public Schools as an instrumental music specialist, music director, and band leader of the West Hills High School Marching Band. During his tenure, he also founded in 1997 and directed the Pittsburgh Public Schools Honors Jazz Band and was the conductor of the MTV Mellow Jazz Student Spectacular. Although he retired in 2001, his contributions to music and schools live on. Currently, Mr. Stemley is a freelance jazz artist and member of both the House of Soul and Southern Comfort bands, which are both coined as one of Pittsburgh's #1 R&B bands. So Mr. Stemley, on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to say thanks for being a man of action and not just words. You transformed the marching band program at West Hills High School in the 80s as high secondary. Mirror after your fame, Grambling State University. Many have attempted to imitate, but have never duplicated your style. You remain a force and role model for many of our students who graduate. So please join me in giving Mr. Calvin Morris Stemley Jr. a round of applause and a big thank you as we present to him as our inaugural recipient of the Calvin Stemley Award.
But that's not all. We would like to welcome a representative from the city of Pittsburgh for an additional award this evening to honor Mr. Stemley. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lee Powell, and this is Chief Staff American Video. He couldn't be here this evening, but I'm so honored and so privileged to share this evening with you. On behalf of the city of Pittsburgh, we are sending a proclamation to Mr. Stemley to make today the official day of Calvin Stemley Day. Thank you so much for your commitment to our students, to our young people in the region. Youth is so important, and to have you here representing our kids and writing their future is so incredibly important. And we are humbled. So on behalf of Mayor Padillo and the City of Pittsburgh, thank you and congratulations on your 4-year day. Let's do it again for Mr. Calvin Stemley. We will remember his name this after a special performance from the Westinghouse Alumni Marching Band.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are just joining us, oh wow, you missed an incredible journey. As this journey is starting to come to an end, we're here with the fantastic, multi-talented Mr. Calvin Stemley. Now, Calvin, you was before we went to the break, you were sharing with us you were teaching in the high school public school system, and it came time that you retired from that. But as you were doing that, you revealed to me you were also performing around the Pittsburgh area as well.
That's true. I was, all during my teaching career, I was still performing. Now, it would mean that I would get home late, have to get up kind of early, but as we make a way. If it's something that we have a passion for, we still make a way. But that all came to an end August the 4th of 01. No, that's not true. September of 02. And since that time, I've been doing this as much as I like, with whomever I like. And that's been a wonderful thing. It's enabled me to practice a lot more than I was able to do when I was teaching, so I can kind of work on self-development and growth and development as a musician. Mm-hmm. And it's also allowed me to be able to expand my horizons with playing with different styles of music, different types of groups. And now I, play with a lot of different types of groups.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. House of Soul?
House of Soul.
How many years?
25 years
25
and counting,
years,
and
yeah.
I'm the only original member from day one.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, you also have two other groups.
Yes, I have a group called the Stemtec, and we kind of do a variety of smooth jazz, R&B, but on any given night you may hear a gospel tune, you may hear a Hezekiah Walker tune, that type of thing. And that particular group right now is going to, starting in 2019, will be at the Hotel Indigo Wallace's Whiskey Room every fourth Thursday from 7 to 9. I play with a group called Southern Comfort Band, which is actually, and it's going to really more focus on that, is actually a Jazz Crusaders cover band. And so that band has been around, and we have a CD recording we did a few years ago. So I'm enjoying the journey with that group. Also, I have a group that it's kind of a project thing. It's called Cross Culture. And it started off with a Japanese pianist, Afro-American saxophonist, German bass player, and Jewish drummer. And at the time that we first started the group, we were playing churches. And what we would do, we would play jazz, pure traditional straight-ahead jazz. We weren't going there playing hymns and religious music. And some of the churches would use it as a fundraiser, a major fundraiser, and we weren't charging that much to do it because what was in it for us is some of the churches have very good acoustics. You have a captive audience that is there. You don't have some of the distractions that we have in other situations that I play in. Yeah. So it was a win-win for us and for the churches. So I do intend to regroup, put that group back together, and I have some other ideas about crazy things I want to do.
Okay,
musically.
well, you just did a sax day.
That's right, the Joy of Sax.
The Joy of Sax. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, the Joy of Sax happened as a result of me and musicians getting together on the north side when I used to live on the north side every Sunday. And every Sunday would be a different saxophone player and would come by with tape cassettes. I had a very large record collection that they could tape. We'd break bread and eat and discuss or argue about music and that type of thing. And Tony Campbell used to come by, Floyd King used to come by, Jay Willis would come by, Kenny Powell would come by, Kenny Fisher, when he was alive, would come by, and we just would do that. So I thought, what if we could do that on a larger scale and bring all those guys together and everybody didn't have to come to my house? And 2 years ago, we came up with the Joy of Sax. And the way that I had put it together was I didn't want to exclude anybody. So it wasn't something that was set up for jazz saxophonists or R&B saxophonists or blues saxophonists. It was all inclusive. We had actually a classical saxophone quartet that came in there, all saxophonists, from the ones that you know of to the ones you don't. Sopraninis and bass saxophonists were represented. The way I'd put it together was some musicians wanted to actually play on stage. Some were part of a large mass choir, sax choir that played a couple of songs. And we actually had we had each saxophone play a 1-minute segment as they went down to try to go for a Guinness Book record. Okay. So we had a lot of fun with that. I gave away free t-shirts that year, free CDs. We did it again this year. It wasn't as well attended, but we still had a great time. And I believe you did some footage on that.
I did. I didn't get my t-shirt yet, though.
Oh, you know what? That's another thing.
Got it on camera right here.
I had to put it, I can't get out of this one. I got to get that t-shirt.
Well, let me ask you this, Kelvin, as we wrap this up. Is there anything that you have not done that you still would like to do?
Of course, there's a lot of things that I haven't done that I like to do. I would like to, well, actually, let's just talk realistically. My next project I haven't done. I've done several CDs, but I haven't done one of my own original music. My next project is going to be of my own original music. That's something that I've always liked to do. I've kind of been drawn back into the educational community with doing artist in residence. I did a year and a half at Burgerstown, and there'll be others that I do. So I'm kind of enjoying that. I did mention to you, I'm rearranging my basement so I can get back into composition and arranging, which is something that I like to do. So based on those things, there's still a lot to be done. And as you've mentioned throughout this program about my journey, well, this journey continues. And the journey, it will always continue until you no longer exist. So as long as I exist and can stay healthy, there's other things that I aspire to do that I haven't done. And one very basic thing I like to do is always to try to get better at trying to play the saxophone, because there's so many other great artists that I stand on the shoulders of.
All right.
All right.
Well, I tell you what, we really appreciate you coming down.
Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance, you can come out and hear Mr. Kelvin Stemley with the House of Soul, with Southern Comfort, or the Stemtecs, or anybody else he might be playing with. So you're in for a fantastic treat. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. And remember, whatever you do, make somebody happy, make somebody strong.